Hello, everybody. I'm going to try to do something a little bit different today to talk about the Mitchells versus the Machines. I will get into like kind of my personal thoughts and review of the movie. Not a review, but impressions of the movie, because I watched it a couple days ago. But before we do that, I would like to just kind of scan the internet to, one, learn more about the people who made the movie and a little bit about the production process, and then move on to looking at a couple of other reviews and what other people online have been saying about the movie, because I have no idea how people feel about this one. I'm going in cold. I saw the trailer. When did the first trailer come out for this movie? At least a year ago? It feels much longer, doesn't it? But I remember seeing that first trailer, and I have a feeling, this is probably not all that insightful, but I have a feeling that Sony originally planned to just release this to theaters and everything, but for very obvious reasons, that didn't really pan out. It probably kept getting pushed back, and now it got dumped to Netflix. Also, it comes from Sony Pictures Animation. If you're unaware, Lord & Miller signed a huge 5-year overall deal with Sony for 9 figures, so like minimum $50 million each, right? I think I have the math correct on that. Insane. Apparently they also have some kind of deal with Universal, which is okay, guy. I mean, they're good. They know what they're doing. Let's look at, first of all, just some cast and crew stuff. I don't know these directors at all. Jeff wrote Gravity Falls. I'm not a big fan of Gravity Falls. Don't tell anybody about that. Disenchantment. Oh no. Oh no. Michael. Also Gravity Falls. And some shorts, I guess, and mostly Gravity Falls. Okay. So this is the one kind of big point that I want to make right here out of the gate, is that especially film nerds and animation nerds, myself included, or anybody who's really into basically any type of media, I think there's a really serious tendency for hero worship. You find specific artists who really inspire you, and you're just like, wow, they're so good. How did they get so good? Everything they touch just seems to be amazing. And it results in this weird like positive bias that you then have for everything they touch in the future, and it kind of clouds judgment maybe in certain situations. I'm trying to be like super diplomatic about how I say this, and again, I do it too, for sure. I do think I even do it with Lord & Miller. For me, that ended up being kind of a negative thing with how I interacted with this movie, because I did have pretty high expectations all across the board, from visuals to script to just like overall messaging. I was really expecting a lot from this movie. I did kind of end up disappointed about it. So again, like, this is not being directed by Lord & Miller, right? We can't have that expectation. Yes, they are very heavily involved, obviously. We can't expect that a copy paste of their previous creative work. So I do think that's important to at least note when we talk about this movie. Also, good Lord, I know that we say this with like every animated movie or something with big CG stuff, but like there's so many people that work on this stuff. When it's not in service of a good script, it makes you a little sad. Is my mouse really loud? Anyway, although I will say, check this out. Okay, director, writer guy voices the son in the family, and without knowing that up front, that was the voice that stood out to me the most as bad casting. Like, I get that it can be like a joke sometimes on, big animated movies. Oh, it's kind of an inside joke. The director will do a silly voice for one character, and that's it. So, like, Brad Bird voicing Edna in Incredibles, right? It's like, oh, ha, 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 how funny. And it's happened other times, too. I think it happened in Storks. I really want to talk about Storks soon. I will very briefly comment on the cast. For one thing, Danny McBride, I thought was kind of an odd choice. I'm not going to say a bad choice. The whole time I just kept thinking, this sounds like it's supposed to be Seth Rogen, but it's clearly not. But also, I don't feel any personality being brought to the role other than like really basic jokes about how dads are, specifically like white suburban dads. Abby Jacobson, who doesn't like Abby Jacobson? And she's doing even on Disenchantment, she's doing a great job, even if she's not given great material. Maya Rudolph, of course. I mean, come on. She's the best. She's wonderful. And Olivia Colman, remember when everybody knew about Olivia Colman? And here she is again as an AI. Let's move on to Rotten Tomatoes. Let's see what Rotten Tomatoes has to say. Wow. Wow. Honestly, I was not expecting that. I wasn't expecting either of these scores at all. For fun, let's read the eye-catching and energetic. Yes, I agree with all that. The Mitchells versus the Machines, which I thought was called the Mitchells versus the Robots, delivers a funny, feel-good story that the whole family can enjoy. Okay, yes. I mostly agree. That's an important thing to note with any Rotten Tomatoes anything, is it's the amount of people that give more generally positive reviews. And so in that case, I'm not surprised that most people, whether critics or just average viewers, said generally positive things about the movie. Because, again, I will end up saying some generally positive things about the movie, even though I have a lot of criticisms of specific aspects of it. It's really not as surprising as I was making it out to be. But at the same time, like, with this kind of rating, Rotten Tomatoes ends up putting it in lists of like, well, these are the best animated movies ever. Casting Olivia Colman as the voice of a demonic IA is only the first stroke of genius. Huh? And again, look, right, we're mentioning Lord and Miller. They're producers, sharp, funny, self-aware. Ooh. At times, it can't seem to stick to a single story thread for more than a minute, but its emotional design and trajectory are crystal clear, and the chaos feels like part of a grand plan. No, not at all. I don't agree. Doesn't have the quote emotional kick of a Pixar movie is only because the creative investment has gone elsewhere, mostly into the hyper-powered pacing. That's actually a pretty good point, sir. Good work. Unwaveringly sweet, and then largely avoid the genre's worst cliches. I would say that it's actually pretty cliche, especially in the script, and as these people are mentioning, the emotional arc. It's all really boilerplate to me. This is one of the funniest movies I have seen in years. This movie blew me away. Wow. Michael M. That's me, by the way. No. Oh, boy, this is turning out much more interesting than I expected. I did watch Thunder Force. Getting distracted. Let's go to Letterboxd. Oh, by the way, I'm on Letterboxd. I mean, I just log stuff there, but if you want to check, that's my thing. Apparently, I don't remember choosing that name, but okay. Sorry. Is that a spoiler? That's what I rated the movie. Yes, Gene, I know. Okay, so where's the, what? Oh no, what if a Lord Miller movie had bad jokes? Yeah, I agree with this, absolutely. The brother voicing, that's what I mentioned earlier. Nope, bad choice. That was a bad choice. So Letterboxd, if you don't know, it's like kind of social media film geeky site where you can log every movie you watch, you can rate everything, you can write little reviews. It tends to be people who are more interested in movies in general. I'm not going to say that means that the ratings are somehow more valid or more worthy of taking a look at compared to IMDb or any other social media type crowdsourced site. But at the same time, I guess on a curve, I tend to agree with ratings on Letterboxd a little bit more. And here, I was actually pretty surprised again. This I did see earlier. Really, really, really into it. I don't feel this positively about the movie. And I guess this is as good a time as any to switch over to just like my mini review. Again, like to do a full review, I generally like to have more time to think about something, to watch it a few more times before I start to put something together about it. So this is really, it's honestly more of an impressions thing, but I still want to share the thoughts just because I kind of doubt I'll be doing a longer video on this movie at all because I'm already forgetting it. For one, I have a few different plus points here. So I did mostly like the handling of different generational approaches to phones and other tech and like internet stuff, because based on the trailer I was really worried that it was going to be a very boomer inspired movie of like this young girl is going to realize that there's value in putting down the phone, and experiencing the world just naturally. But it didn't really do that. It establishes pretty early on. There's a decent line from the main character whose name I've completely forgotten. Katie, something like that, says, well, Dad, I think she's just pointing to her phone. This is how I experience the world. It's a tool, essentially, that I'm using to experience life, and I use it to process things and filter ideas and all that kind of stuff. And I thought that was decent. It's not like the best possible take, but at the same time, it wasn't so simplistic to say, oh, it's always bad. It's always bad. bad for kids to be on the phone all the time and blah, 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 blah. Oh, these are terrible things. And it's very funny because, well, it swings around the other direction. The movie does in terms of messaging when we get to AI and the phone stuff. I do want to say that the art direction of this movie is pretty fantastic. And I say that even without really even enjoying the visuals that much. I think it was just plain appreciation for how distinctive and unique the movie looks and how it presents itself. It does seem to be combining hand-drawn art with CG models. I haven't seen something quite like that. And in particular, when you see these specific, I don't know, I guess I would call them like textures on specific models within any given scene, or maybe it's just backgrounds are mostly hand-drawn, but like the depth that is given to them by the art and just the amount of variation, the really detailed line work, just and the shading, I really love it, even though it's in service of portraying these settings that are really mundane and kind of naturally ugly, like just some awful suburban house somewhere in Michigan, I guess is where they start out. And then in particular, there's that one roadside dinosaur stop later on where it's just like, oh yeah, we are well aware that a lot of the US is downright ugly and like cheap and skeezy. It still managed to be enjoyable to look at, even by making everything more detailed and immersive in a way. So I just have to say good job. I just saw the trailer the other day for that new Spirit movie, because I guess Spirit is a property that's coming back now. That just looks like all the Disney animated stuff where it's just action figure character models and everything's really smooth. You don't really get a sense of artistic vision out of any of it. And here, I mean, production design is Lindsay Olivares, art direction is Toby Wilson. I mean, everybody else for executing it. Like, it is very impressive. It is really impressive how this movie looks, and the visual style, the aesthetic is indeed supported really strongly by the pacing, which, you know, multiple critics and people have noted in their reviews. It has pretty decent pacing after a point. I actually found myself pretty bored through like the first hour, which is kind of strange for me because I have a pretty high tolerance for very slow moving movies. I knew where the story was heading from the first 5 minutes, so I wasn't all that excited to see where it was going to go, whether in terms of the emotional arc with the dad and daughter, or the big, you know, apocalyptic tech is maybe a bad thing. But I do still have a lot of positive feelings about those aspects of the movie, between like parts of how they handle the tech stuff and certainly the art direction and the visuals. Now, moving on to some negative points. Even from the trailer, I was a little bit wary about the idea of basing the story, or at least one of the major themes is the role that technology plays in our lives, okay? And specifically, they really tried to tap into like meme culture to a certain extent and like internet humor. It's hard to get that stuff right. It's kind of like Uncanny Valley, where the online humor community at large, they can smell an imposter a million miles away. Like if someone tries to be, oh, we're cool and we're making a meme, like it's not gonna fly. So that right away, I was like, that's okay. I mean, I guess it's relevant subject matter, but the other problem there is that internet culture and just even tech stuff in general develops and evolves so quickly that there's this huge danger of feeling outdated basically immediately, basically by the time the movie is done. There's a remix of Numa Numa that kind of becomes like the big song, like the big pop song that's in the movie. And when they bring it back for like kind of the climax where the families, oh, they're finally working together. Ooh, they bring the song back again and it's like, oh, it's supposed to be quirky and ironic, but also genuine because they actually love each other. And it was a big cringe moment for me. I don't think it worked. I don't think it, people can disagree. I don't think that moment worked at all. And the movie's brand new. it's gonna feel even more so the older it gets. Sony product placement is not new. It's in tons of their movies. I wasn't surprised here. There's some in Spider-Verse, like the handy cam that's clearly marked Sony, or the girl's Sony headphones. I was like, okay. So the more negative side of how the movie handles messaging around tech. There's a moment where Olivia Colman AI is basically giving Mark Zuckerberg more or less a dressing down. They even call the character Mark, which that was kind of another cringe moment. It's like, could it be more on the nose? But he's giving this guy a dressing down, and the phone/AI is saying, why would you think that tech is the bad thing? We gave you access to unlimited knowledge and all the media you could ever want and all this stuff, and you were super lazy and dumb Americans about it, and blah, 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 blah. There's the boomer coming through. There's a really awful... I could see people within Silicon Valley trying to make that argument of, oh no, tech is an absolute good. If people are experiencing any problems because of it, it's their fault. That's a really weird victim-blamey moment for the movie to include, and the fact is, no, tech itself, in any iteration, is not an absolute good. It's also not an absolute evil. As we're getting into more and more sort of social science research about social media usage and phone usage and all that stuff, there can be really serious negative effects of using all this stuff. And having access to mass amounts of data, it doesn't really even bother getting into that, which I thought was strange for a movie that pinned so much of its theming around tech. And even The Incredibles 2 had just awful takes about like technology and how it relates to systems of power, and I'm just kind of surprised that the people making these movies decide they're going to tap into the subject matter without apparently doing any kind of actual research or talking to people with different views on the thing. It doesn't actually end up connecting to the family storyline, in my opinion. It's resolved very early on, where it said, no, these devices are not actually a barrier to human relationships. They didn't mesh with me, and it's very strange because those are the two biggest themes in the movie. I do think the script is really basic. It feels really basic to me. It feels like something I've seen so many times before, and I had higher expectations based on the Lord & Miller involvement, but they didn't write the thing. It felt old. It felt like mid-90s to me, maybe late 90s in terms of the storytelling, and especially just the family theme in general, and like, they're not getting along, but I bet they were just this setup of, this family's so dysfunctional, and that other family, they're not dysfunctional. Also, the attempts to critique like the tech industry at large basically boil down to, hey, you shouldn't gather a bunch of personal data and put it into an AI. That's the best you got? Because there's some really bad things happening in terms of big data stuff and selling it to other companies and the things it's being used for, and how AI is being applied to housing for homeless people, all kinds of stuff. There's some really bad business. And the best you could do is this like dad argument of, well, I don't like when you take my personal data, and AI sounds scary, so please don't mess around with those. Like, that's it? I mean, I get that it's like a kids in a family movie, but it felt really toothless to me, and kind of like, why did you even bother if you're just gonna half-ass that argument? And I need to stop. I really need to stop talking. It's been a long time. Those are like very general impressions of the movie, as well as a very brief look into how the internet has been responding to it so far. Quite honestly, I would like to hear what other people think about it, and if they think it's generally good, if they think that it's going to stand the test of time, especially if they think it did a good job of portraying the internet where we all currently are. So please tell me, but otherwise, I don't know. I just kind of feel demoralized by the whole thing, which is strange. I don't think that's how it's supposed to make me feel. But that's about it for this kind of different format, and I'll talk to you later. Goodbye.